Imagine this: you're sitting in a room full of people. Someone makes a pointed comment, not outright hostile, but sharp enough to sting. The room goes quiet. Your heart begins to race just a bit. A choice appears before you. Do you speak up? Defend yourself? Or do you retreat into silence? Nod, plaster on a polite smile, and hope nobody noticed? For millions of people, that second option isn't just a choice, it's automatic reflex. Conflict avoidance isn't about apathy or spinelessness. It's a deeply human psychological strategy that hides powerful truths about how we think, feel, and protect ourselves. Today, we're diving into the minds of people who avoid conflict, what they're really thinking, and why their silence speaks louder than most words ever could. If you've ever shied away from a difficult conversation, let things go even when you felt wronged, or felt your stomach drop at the idea of confrontation, you're not alone. Conflict avoidance is one of the most common, yet least understood, behavioral patterns in relationships, workplaces, and everyday life. The surprise? Those who avoid conflict aren't weak. Often, they're highly sensitive, deeply attuned to others, and carrying silent burdens no one ever sees. So let's peel back the layers. At the surface, conflict looks like noise or shouting, arguing, raised voices. But psychologists see conflict as a trigger. For some people, that trigger sets off an internal alarm system that feels unbearable. Their brains link conflict with emotional danger. Not physical danger, emotional danger. The kind that threatens their sense of safety, acceptance, and belonging. Why? Because for many people, early experiences taught them that conflict brings rejection. Maybe they grew up in a home where loud disagreements led to punishment or emotional withdrawal. Maybe they learned that love equals peace, and peace equals suppressing discomfort. So over time, their nervous systems developed this rule: conflict equals danger. Avoid at all costs. Inside the mind of someone who avoids conflict, a cascade of thoughts unfolds in an instant, faster than conscious awareness. Let's imagine what that inner monologue might sound like in a stressful moment. If I speak up, they'll get angry. If they get angry, they'll reject me. If they reject me, I'll be alone. Alone, that's unbearable. Before they even realize it, their body has already shifted into survival mode. Heart rate increases. Thoughts scramble. The safest option becomes retreat. Their brain says, better to be wrong silently than unsafe openly. But this avoidance isn't always about fear. In many cases, people who avoid conflict are highly empathetic. They feel emotions intensely, both their own and others. They pick up on tension long before anyone else does. They sense subtle shifts in tone, body language, or expression. This hyper-awareness becomes both a gift and a burden. For example, in a group project at work, someone offers a flawed idea. A conflict avoider might instantly spot the problem. But instead of offering constructive feedback, they hold back. Why? Because in their mind, pointing out the flaw could disrupt harmony, make someone feel inadequate, or spark defensiveness. They think not. This idea might hurt the outcome, but my feedback might hurt their feelings. Their priority isn't being right, it's preserving emotional equilibrium. That's not weakness. It's a deeply human drive to maintain connection and safety. Now here's where it gets tricky. Avoiding conflict might feel like peace in the moment, but in the long term, it often breeds something much more toxic: resentment. Because when someone continuously sacrifices their truth for harmony, those unspoken feelings don't disappear. They accumulate like storm clouds, quiet at first, but heavy and dense over time. And eventually, they can burst. This is why many people who avoid conflict struggle with simmering frustrations, yet never express them until one small thing finally breaks the dam. Then suddenly, they explode, not at the big issue, but at the weight of all the silence moments before. So what's really going on inside their minds? Let's unpack the most common psychological drivers. 1. Fear of rejection. Humans are wired for connection. From infancy, we depend on others for survival. So when someone anticipates rejection or social exclusion, the brain lights up threat centers as if physical danger were approaching. To a conflict avoider, rejection isn't abstract, it feels like collapse. Their instinct is to preserve connection at all costs. 2. High emotional sensitivity. Many conflict avoiders experience emotions deeply. They feel joy intensely and hurt deeply. This emotional richness makes them empathetic and compassionate, beloved by friends and partners. But it also makes conflict feel overwhelming. For them, a tense discussion isn't just a conversation, it's an emotional earthquake. 3. Internalized self-doubt. Some who avoid conflict carry beliefs like, "What I think doesn't matter," or "My feelings are less important than others." These beliefs aren't born from weakness, they're learned from repeated experiences where speaking up led to dismissal or punishment. Over time, the internal voice tells them to stay small, stay quiet. 4. The need for control through calm. Interestingly, conflict avoiders often crave control, just not in the ways most people think. They try to control the emotional climate around them. If they can prevent arguments, they believe they can prevent pain. So they preemptively avoid anything that could disrupt peace. So how do conflict avoiders break this cycle? It starts with reinterpreting conflict not as danger, but as communication. That shift isn't easy, it's like retraining your nervous system. It means learning that disagreement doesn't have to equal rejection, and your truth doesn't have to threaten another person's worth. Here's what that might look like in real life. 1. Start small. You don't have to jump into massive confrontations. Start with expressing minor preferences. "I'd rather go for coffee than dinner tonight." These tiny assertions build confidence. 2. Notice your inner signals. Pay attention to physical signs, tight chest, racing thoughts, urge to retreat. These are indicators of fear, not truth. Recognizing them gives you a chance to pause and choose differently. 3. Use I statements. When you do speak up, frame it around your feelings and needs. This reduces perceived threat to others. "I feel overwhelmed when" is less likely to trigger defensiveness than "you always." 4. Practice empathy towards yourself. Conflict avoiders are often empathetic toward others but harsh toward themselves. Practicing self-compassion, acknowledging that your feelings are valid, makes expressing them less scary. Finally, it's important to understand that people who avoid conflict aren't hiding. They are protecting. They are trying to maintain connection, preserve peace, and shield themselves from what their brains interpret as emotional danger. But peace built on silence eventually cracks. True peace, the kind that lasts, comes from honest communication and mutual respect. So the next time you find yourself shrinking from conflict, don't scold yourself. Instead, ask, what am I really afraid will happen? What am I protecting? And what might happen if I speak my truth with kindness? Because at the heart of conflict avoidance isn't weakness, it's fear. And fear, like all emotions, can be understood, faced, and transformed. If you found this exploration illuminating, consider what voices inside you are quiet right now, and what might happen if you let them speak. The first step toward change isn't confrontation, it's awareness. And that's where your journey begins.